Hey Mallards, it's Wednesday. I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a while, which is a top 5 Wednesday, because I didn't have anything else planned for today. So today I'm going to talk about my top 5 RPG characters, not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons, although I think all but one of them are Dungeons and Dragons. I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons growing up and since then, and I've played a few other systems, but never as long or as involved, so most of my characters are from D&D. So we're going to start with number 5. Number 5 is unique in that it's a character that I conceptualized but never actually got the chance to play. So this is Zell. She is a human monk, and it was for a campaign that was going to be fairy tale based. And so we were all creating fairy tale-like characters. So Zell is short for Rapunzel. And I had this idea that her ridiculously long hair would be, she'd be a Kenesai monk, which is the type that like has a weapon that's attuned to them. And her weapon would be her hair, which would be a magical whip. And I also wanted her to be kind of crazy. So she collects bottles of blood of her enemies and uses it to make paintings. And she likes to find all the different kinds of blood and also like different ages, changes what they're like in the painting. And she doesn't do a lot of magic per se, because monks don't do a lot of magic, but like has learned how to do a specific stasis charm in order to preserve her paintings at the colors she wants them to be. So she was a little bit messed up, like a dark, not necessarily evil, but definitely crazy character. And I just loved the idea of her just grabbing her giant braid and like using it as a weapon. I thought that that was a fun use of Rapunzel, and I was very excited for that campaign that never happened. Number 4 is the only character on this list that's not a Dungeons and Dragons character, and that is Tink, the Chadrafan Technician, which is from the new version of the Star Wars role-playing game. And Tink makes the list because they were a super fun character. Chadrafan are like tiny, I would say like Ewok-sized, but they're bat people. And they were the technician on our ship, and that wasn't a very long-running campaign, but we did have a really, really good time, and Tink in particular was really fun, because I'm very rarely the techie character, and so it was fun to be the just kind of nerdy, kind of awkward techie character, and also I did a lot of speaking in like squeaks and really high voices, because I just assumed that they would talk sort of like a bat, and that was fun for me. Sort of stretching my vocal muscles, which I also don't often do in Dungeons and Dragons when I'm playing. When I'm DMing, I do a little bit more, but when I'm playing, I do a little bit less. And so that was really fun, and just a fun character and an interesting campaign. I bought special dice for that I haven't used since. Number 3 is Ray. Ray is a human fighter from a specific Dungeons and Dragons world where you have dragon marks, which are essentially like sigils on your skin that mark you for certain things. And it is a world of like houses and that sort of thing. But she is a human fighter with the mark of the Sentinel, which makes her a guardian, except instead of a left arm, she has a giant war-forged battle fist. And I mean, it's large in that she is a 16 at the time I was playing her year old girl with a battle fist that should belong to a like beast of a warforged, and she also has a warforged companion, but not like a regular, I'm just like a 6 foot or 7 foot tall human warforged. I'm talking like the Iron Giant, 18 feet tall, hulking figure of a warforged named Coven, who is her companion. And that character was really fun. It was really fun to play the baby play really, really young, to use a sort of unwieldy fist. Think sort of like Winter Soldier, except if Bucky Barnes was like pre-serum Steve Rogers, but had that same arm. That's sort of the vibe. And I just liked her as a character. She was fun to play with. She was interesting, and having the Iron Giant follow you around is a good time. Like, Coven came in a pinch, but also had problems in that we went into the sewers and he can't fit through the manhole covers, so we just had to go without him. And it's just fun to play with that dynamic, and it's a character that I really, really liked. Number 2 is a character named Jet. Jet is a revenant and a shadow dancer, which in Dungeons and Dragons is like an assassin, but who has become skilled enough to actually like disappear and appear from shadows. And a revenant is a like just this side of zombie, somebody who's been brought back to life, but their bodies specifically are like sunken and sort of skeletal, and they don't look like they did when they were alive. Revenants like are a conjured physical being that a soul that was brought back is put in. And I like Jet mostly because of her backstory. So she was a dragonborn who was fighting an ice dragonborn who was fighting this sort of evil group, and she died in that fight. And then the Raven Queen brought her back to life. Well, then these monks were trying to bring themselves an assassin, and they thought they were summoning this girl named Amira, who was a killer, and instead they ended up with Misha was her name, but Jet is her name now. So now they ended up with Jet, and she got trained then to be an assassin as she brought back. But the Raven Queen had tricked them, essentially. The Raven Queen in Dungeons and Dragons is sort of like a Queen of the Dead sort of idea. And so she brought Jet back for her own purposes and has marked people for assassination. So Jet essentially gets these names of people she should assassinate, and the Raven Queen provides a raven's feather that is essentially an indication of, yes, you should definitely kill this person, or she doesn't provide the feather, which is supposed to be an indication that the person should not be killed. And I liked her backstory a lot. She was a fun character to play. She's got some darkness. She's got some intrigue. She's one of the characters that I really would like to develop further. Like, she could have her own novel for sure if I flesh out a little bit more of what's going on with her. And the number 1 character is also a D&D character. Her name is Milas. She is a halfling rogue because she was my first long campaign character from college, and I was basic. And I'm not apologizing for that, because everyone should play a human, a half-orc fighter, or sorry, a half-orc barbarian, or a human fighter, or you know, an elf sorcerer or a halfling rogue, all those sort of cliche characters that are cooked up in your pre-gen character rules. And I loved Milas. She was tricky, she sneak attacked a lot, and she went on the longest campaign that I have ever done, the Blades of Luck. We had a donkey named Eddie Murphy. We had a pretty cliche party, and it was the first campaign journal that I religiously kept, and she evolved into a character that I had then used in a novel that I wrote, and I'm fully willing to admit that every halfling rogue that has happened to me since then, and there have been a few, was absolutely based on Milas and her sort of personality, her sarcastic wit and brilliance and sneaking. Milas was literally just like everything that I was too tall and too cool to be. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 RPG characters. As mentioned, most of them are Dungeons and Dragons. I have played a lot of other types of campaigns, but no characters that like really gripped me in the same way that these did. So if you play tabletop role-playing games, let me know who your favorite characters that you've ever created are. And let me know if you have characters that you've created that you've never had the chance to play. I'd be interested to find out. And I will see you tomorrow.